Hello. Last week we learned the first poem ever recorded in China, the Guanju from the book Shi Jing. We said that poems in this book were all created by folks across China, and it was the kings that ordered officers to collect this sort of poems so they can be recorded and passed on. This tradition was then largely followed in later dynasties. For example, in the Han Dynasty, the emperors even set up a department of music, and one of its main functions was to collect poems and perhaps to edit them and match them to tunes to be sung and performed. This department or organization is 乐府. 乐 means music, and 府 means a large house. The poem we are going to learn today is from this organization. It's from the Han Dynasty, so it's from Han Yuefu. If we look at this slide again, this poem was about 2,000 years old, which is still very ancient to nowadays. The title of this poem is 长歌行. Xing is a type of tunes or formats to be performed during those days, and 长歌 is just a particular name of this format. Literally, it means long song. It's a bit like 凉州词 in that many poets have written poems with this title. But because this particular one is from the Han Yuefu, there isn't a real name author that's attributed to it. In Han Dynasty, the main form poetry took was the Wu Yan poem, i.e., 5 characters in a line, which is in contrast with the predominant Si Yan, 4 characters in the line that we see in poems from this Shi Jing book. Let's read this poem together first. 长歌行，青青园中葵，朝露待日晞。阳春布德泽，万物生光辉。常恐秋节至，焜黄花叶衰。百川东到海，何时复西归？少壮不努力，老大徒伤悲。Poems before the Tang Dynasty were much freer in form. For example, there was no rules on how long poems should be. So these poems can be as long as intended. In this case, if we call 2 lines as a couplet, then there are 5 couplets. When people wrote this kind of poems, there were rarely any need to consider the structure of the poem as a whole and carefully lay out lines one by one. Poems from this period were more spontaneous. They went on in a natural way, one layer after another, and when there was nothing to be added, would just end there. You'll feel this kind of style in this poem. Okay, let's see what this poem is about. 青青园中葵. 青 is green, 园 is garden, 中 is in. Kui is a type of plant, an edible vegetable. So it's a bit like this. This is saying the green kui vegetable in the garden. And then 朝露待日晞. 朝 is morning, 露 is dew, 待 is to wait for, 日 is the sun, and 晞 is to dry. So there is morning dew on the vegetable, which is waiting to be dried. We said last week, when we were learning the poem Guanju, that Chinese people often saw a deep connection between certain natural scenes and certain subjects related to human beings' experience. So they often started with a scene and followed by what was really intended. For example, in Guanju, it started with 关关雎鸠，在河之洲, a natural scene, and followed by the real subject, 窈窕淑女，君子好逑. Here is the same. It started with a scene in the morning, implying something new, exciting, full of hope and ambition. But it went on with more of this sort of description of natural scenes and developed the ideas that were contained in these scenes and only came to the real point at the very end. Let's see. The next couplet. 阳春布德泽，万物生光辉. Yang is the sun. Chun is spring. So Yang Chun means spring with the sun, i.e. the warm spring. Bu is to cast, to give. A bu originally means a piece of cloth, but here is used as a verb to cast like a piece of big cloth, covering a large area. De means a virtue. Ze means water. Both can be interpreted as important nutrients that are valuable to living things. So de ze together means nutrients or great benefit that is granted by the warm spring. Now that the warm spring has caused its benefit widely, what is the outcome? One is 10,000, lot. Wu is thing, either living or non-living things. Sheng is to produce. Guanghui is light, the sparks of light. So under the kindness of the warm spring, everything is shining with lights. This is really fantastic. It's morning, the start of the day, and it's spring, the start of the year. It is warm, vegetable is green, everything is full of energy, shining with delight. This scenario, what is it like? Don't we think it's a bit like human beings' life? When we are children, we're young, and we're always happy and cheerful with all the beautiful time ahead of us that we can spend. But the poem then took a turn to something not that bright. 长 is often, 恐 is being afraid, 秋 is autumn, and 节 means certain time period, 至 is to arrive. So despite all this happiness, these things, this 清清园中葵, everything that is under the kindness of the spring, they all often fear that the autumn would inevitably come. What would happen then? Kun means to lose its colors, fading. Huang is yellow. Hua here, the same as this hua. It means flowers. And ye, leaves. And shuai means to wither. So those lovely green plants, those plants with fresh dewdrops on them in the morning, would lose all their color and turn dry yellow in the autumn. The flowers and leaves would all wither. That's what everything is afraid of. This is such a stark reminder that good time is not forever, and we shouldn't take good things for granted, shouldn't we? The next two lines elaborated on the idea of good time would always be gone and never to return. Bai is 100, Chuan is river, Dong is east, Dao is to get to, and Hai is the sea. The Chinese geography is such that the west is the highest and dropping down towards the east. So most rivers flow from the west to east. And this line is saying hundreds of rivers run to the sea in the east. And then 何时复西归? 何 is what? Which? 时 is time. So 何时 is what time? When? 复 means again. 西 is west. 归 is to return. All these rivers flow to the east into the sea. When are they going to return to the west? This is a rhetorical question, actually saying, in no way are they going back to the west. The one-directional flow of the river is very much like the one-directional flow of the time. Neither can ever turn back. So in Chinese literature, flow of river is often used as an allegory to refer to the passing of the time. Now, if we look again at these four couplets, it's very obvious that the poem is trying to portray the fact that time is running fast, it's precious, but easily gone and never to be gained again. This idea has been repeatedly presented through a variety of subjects: the plants, the dewdrops, the flowers, the leaves, rivers, etc., which very naturally evolves to the final line, the real point of this poem, revealing the purpose of relating all these objects. Shao means young, and zhuang means at the prime time of one's life. Bu is not. 努力 means hardworking. This 少壮 is opposite to this 老大. 老 means old, and 大 means grown up, and here also meaning growing old. 图 means in vain. 伤 and 悲 both mean feeling sad. So if people don't work hard when they are young and able, If they don't treasure the time and make the best use of it, when they grow old, and obviously they wouldn't have achieved much, and they would feel sad, they would deeply regret the time they wasted when young. But what would be the use of the regret? They would just feel sad, 伤悲, or lament, in vain, 徒伤悲. There is nothing they can do about it. So these two lines are really a firm warning or admonition to people, telling them to treasure time, not to waste it, to make the days count when they are young. So to avoid the embarrassment and helplessness when they grow old. This idea is a universal one, and across culture, across ages, has been brought up again and again. On this occasion, in this poem, it was presented very beautifully. The poem leads the readers down a path of a number of metaphors, revealing this conclusion almost in a surprise, but totally convincing. And this 少壮不努力,老大徒伤悲 has become one of the most famous idioms in Chinese, educating young kids generations after generations. That's all. Thank you.